All right, what's up, guys, and welcome to the Score eSports podcast. I believe this is episode 41, which sounds insane to say. Yeah. I am your host, as per usual, Colin McNeil. Joining me in the studio today, we got Gabriel, Zoltan, Johan.
That's crazy. We're almost at a year now, because if we get to 52...
No, we're not at a year.
If we get to 50...
We're not even close. We started in the spring?
I'm almost at a year.
No, we started in the winter. Shit, you're right. We started in February. Yeah. Holy cow. And the man behind the boards, Josh Burry.
How's it going, guys?
Guys, there's a small esports tournament going on right now in China. I don't know if you heard about it. It's League of Legends World Championship. And so we're really excited to do another show.
What's that?
Championship. I haven't had my coffee today.
I've never heard of that before.
Now. Yeah. Which is why we're excited to have a very special guest on this episode of the Score Esports podcast. We've got Barney Morris. You probably know him better as Alphari. He is the top laner for Misfits. Man, did his team have a hell of a run at Worlds this year. We have a ton of questions for him.
Absolutely.
They took SKT to the limit, who are now in the grand finals, obviously. Even for a guy yeah, kind of. Even for a guy like me who's not as much of a league head as you two guys are, what Misfits did was so cool. Like, it was so exciting to watch and to consume.
Absolutely.
So without further ado, why don't we get right into it and bring Alphari on?
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Can you hear us okay, Barney?
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Hey, Barney.
Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking time for us. And I just want to say before we even start, like, congratulations on your amazing run at Worlds.
Thank you.
Where are you right now? Are you back in the UK? Are you back in Berlin? Are you still going about Asia? Whereabouts are you?
I'm back in the UK. I'm with my family in Wales.
Okay. Cool.
Are you playing Yu-Gi-Oh with Maxlore right now?
No. I got rid of my cards.
Oh, shoot.
Just when the Twitch marathon happens.
Yeah.
Bad timing. When did you get home?
Like a week ago now.
Okay.
Then, yeah.
I
had to fly straight after we lost, so...
man.
About a week ago.
Jesus.
You didn't even have time to kind of process it?
Well, it was the next day, but actually our coach had to fly like the same night, so...
Oh, my goodness.
We didn't really have that much time.
Hussein.
Man, you didn't even get a moment to compress, to sort of reflect at all.
Yeah.
So why don't we do that now, then?
Oh, I like that idea.
Yeah, because I'm sure that Alphari's not thought about this at all.
Yeah,
since he got back.
I want to
He's
hear
like,
those.
oh yeah, I've kind of forgot about that.
I want to hear those thoughts, because obviously you probably thought about the plane ride home, etc. But I want to hear personally. You get into this game with SK Telecom, and
you're talking about the quarterfinals now, right?
Quarterfinal series against SK Telecom, defending world champions, and a lot of people don't predict you guys to be doing anything of note in this series, and yet, like, a lot of analysts, a lot of professional opinions suggest that before the series, and then after the series, we get you guys, like Colin said, taking SKT to the limits. I kind of want to know, what was the strategy that you guys had going into that series that allowed you to even do that in the first place?
Personally, I don't bother myself too much with strategies. Like drafting and so on is like mostly the coach's job, and they keep it very like self-contained, and I trust them to do a good job. And when I get on stage and we get like a champ select, then whatever comp I get is like whatever comp I get. I don't talk so much about it beforehand, but I think the coaches had a good idea of what we were comfortable with, and we went in most games with a different strategy. Like first game, we tried playing more standard with like Ardent and just like picks that we'd seen work against SKT before with EDG. Like we had a Rumble, which EDG got a huge leads with, but we were like more confident that we'd be able to actually close, unlike EDG. So we did have like different strategies prepared, and obviously the one where we just kept going for engaged support and skipping Ardent support and playing more around bot was the strategy that started working really well for us.
Is there like, I'm curious from your perspective, is there like a psychological factor to playing a team like SKT1? Do you sit there, during the draft or before you go on stage and going, okay, well, Faker's in this game. You know, this is the best team in the world. Is that a factor at all?
I don't think there's. I mean, personally, I didn't feel like there was much of a factor playing against SKT as opposed to any other team. Obviously, I'm aware that their players are really good. Particularly Faker is obviously probably the best player of all time, right? But it doesn't really like make a psychological difference as much as it'll just maybe like make a strategical difference. Whereas if I'm playing against Faker, you know, I might not take as many risks when trying to trade against him or something like this if I was a mid laner or if I was like ganking him. But I don't think there's like much of a psychological impact. Like we're the pretty big underdogs, so which we've like pretty much always been this year at least in terms of like most series that we played. We've always been the underdogs, and we were like pretty comfortable being that.
I want to touch on that underdog status just a bit too, because like I was saying in the kind of our pre-show meeting, Misfits is particularly interesting because they are part of the group. I think it's the only time this happened in World's history where the bottom two seeds of that group make it out of that group.
But
right?
I was
World's
immediately...
Elite and you have Misfits, right? And that's super interesting to me. You know, you guys being the underdog, obviously your regular season as well. Your summer split wasn't as good, and you came into the Fnatic series as underdogs. Do you guys feel like that underdog status gives you like a buff at all times because you're not worried about the games that you go into necessarily ever?
I do think that it would be like more helpful to be considered the underdogs as opposed to like the heavy favorites. Like in our series against SKT, right after we lost game 1, like we weren't panicking or anything like this, and everyone was like still really motivated because we were expected to go like get crushed by most people, right? But after SKT lost 2 games, like you could look over and you could actually see them start getting stressed, and I think that just kind of displays how being a underdog can be like more helpful, because it's not really like, even if you lose, like sure it sucks, but you can't really expect much to be different. So I think it is kind of helpful, yeah.
That must have felt great. Like, I don't know. How good did it feel to look over and see SKT sweating with you guys up a game?
It was definitely interesting. Yeah. And watching like Coma just sweating and looking really stressed in the post-game interview is really funny too, even after we lost.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. One thing I want to ask a little bit about SKT was, I think this is the best performance ever by a Western team in a best of 5 against SKT in this era, right?
Absolutely.
Like this is just like kind of it is history, really.
Yeah.
And even though you guys didn't pull through, I mean, this is such an awesome moment in League of Legends history. So I wanted to just quickly ask about your matchup against Huni. I'm an unabashed Huni fan. And I want to know, like, what did you see from this guy? Because I mean, he's been the topic of some controversy this year. You know, there have been times where Antara was getting played and
he didn't even play half the year, right?
Yeah. So what did you see from this guy? And like overall, what's your feeling about him?
So when I saw, when SKT qualified for Worlds, I was personally going to prefer like playing with Antara as opposed to bringing Huni over, because I thought that Antara had like a more flexible playstyle and that he looked better on tanks and looked more consistent, and he also was like very good in his own right as well as Huni. So when they brought over Huni, I was a little bit, like, why did they do that? But I think the obvious answer is that because of the match against Longzhu in the finals where Antara got kind of smashed by Khan.
Yeah.
And Huni kind of held his own. I think that kind of showed the differences in the top laners, where Huni has a very similar style to Khan, I think. I honestly think that you could like switch Khan and Huni and the teams wouldn't be like much different. I think they both play really similar styles and really similar champions. And I think that was what SKT were focusing on, and I think I kind of grew to appreciate that like more this tournament. When I played against Huni, I I mean, first of all, I think he's like a lot better on aggressive champions than he is on like defensive champions. I think he kind of showed that. I think his Jace was really good, and it's probably like the best Jace that I played against on stage for sure, at least. And yeah, like even though he went a bit of an unconventional item build with like the tier, which is a lot slower than Jace usually like tends to prefer, I thought it was it actually ended up working, and he was probably, I would say, like the strongest top laner I played so far in a competitive match. I think he's actually pretty underrated. Even myself underrated him a little bit, like coming into Worlds, but then I like got to play against him more, especially in solo queue and stuff like this, and I kind of saw that him and Khan weren't too similar. But I definitely think he's underrated, and I think Jace is his best champion, like by a decent amount right now. So I think it's important, like for Samsung when they play them, to try to keep that champion away from him. But yeah, he's pretty good.
I think we definitely want to touch on the matchup in a little bit, but I think maybe Gabe had something you wanted to say about that.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask specifically, you're playing these like really long sets. You take SKT to game 5 in a foreign environment, and for all intents and purposes, not counting the jump from the UK to Berlin, you're playing kind of in another country with different, food, different ways of sleeping, totally different environment, essentially, right? Did that have an impact on you or any of your teammates playing in this international tournament in a foreign environment at all? Was it positive or negative too? It could have been positive as well.
True.
I don't think there was much of a difference, to be honest. I think if there were to be like a difference come about from traveling and playing in these different countries, it would just be that you have to spend time traveling, and you can't just like wake up and go straight to your PC and play. So you have like less practice time in that regard. But like Riot took care of us. They like gave us good food, and like, there wasn't really like anything bad happening. We had computers most of the time that we could play on. Yeah, there wasn't really much of a difference.
Oh, okay.
Now you kind of set the scene a few minutes ago of your series against SKT, specifically when you were 2-1 up and they were, as you say, starting to sweat.
Get stressed.
Yeah, get stressed, exactly. I kind of want to take it back to that because that is like a really cool moment that I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for.
Yeah.
We've only been talking to you for a few minutes, Alphari, but you seem like a very calm, collected, in control type of guy to me. When you're 2 up on the 1 up on the best team in the world, do you start to get a little emotional? Do you start to get a little excited? Do you lose a little bit of that control?
Yeah, we were definitely getting a bit excited as the Nexuses were exploding in our favor, right? But we were all aware that if we like don't keep playing properly, and if we like stay focused, like we need to stay focused, otherwise they're just gonna crush us anyway. Because there's a reason that they're like 3 times world champions, right?
Right.
And it's the moments like these where they don't actually care. They're like still gonna play their best because that's their job, and that's what they've shown that they can do time and time again. So while it was obviously like really emotional when we were actually like exploding the enemy Nexuses, we all knew that we had to keep it under control and just try to replicate our success in the previous games and work on it even.
Was that the same in game 5? Because the tables turned a bit at that point, right? You guys had that lead in game 4. It didn't pan out as well as you thought, marching into the Nexus there. But then game 5 comes around, and it really is both teams' last chance, right? Is the mentality the same there? How does it? Are you feeling a bit more stressed than before in game 4, where you can look over and see that they're stressed, but you have this 1 game buffer to deal with?
I don't think, again, there was like much of a change attitude-wise. I think we all approached game 5 with the same attitude that we're confident in our ability to win against them. Like we've shown that we're better early game, and that we just need to like close properly, which we all know we can. We just need to work on it and play confidently, and that we would win. So we just we just went in. At least I did. I think everyone else did as well. The same attitude where if we lose, we lose. If we win, we win. But we just need to play confidently and play our best, and we have a good chance of winning.
I just want to gush about Misfits early game, just real quick. No, because I've watched these teams all the time. I really pay attention to that stuff, and you guys get leads consistently and have great preparation against most teams that you face. Even in the EU LCS finals, you got gold leads at every game at 15 minutes. Just the way in which Misfits prepare for teams in the early game is really astounding to me, and I think it's really impressive that a Western team can be that consistent against all different manner of strong opponents. So I just wanted to I'm sidetracking things a little bit, but I really do think Misfits' early game is phenomenal.
That's Coach Gabe weighing in.
No, actually, it's a great model.
But Alphari, I just while we're on the topic of coaching, you mentioned something earlier that I found really interesting, which was that the coaches are handling a lot of the strategy in the draft for you.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say, it doesn't seem like that's necessarily the case in every team.
Especially with the controversy in North America with respect to drafting. So Parthenon and Reaper, coaches of TSM and C9, they got a lot of flack for their drafting, and they tried to explain how drafting is a really kind of there's a synergetic portion to it where the player has input and the coach has
give and take.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And it doesn't sound like that's the case with Misfits at all, right?
I mean, I have a lot of confidence in my coaching staff because that's ultimately what they're there for, to help with pick and ban and to be knowledgeable about the game. So I have faith in them to be able to do their job and set us up for success and give us good compositions that we've practiced, which they can.
Do you believe do you believe North American players then don't have faith in their coaching staff at all? Is that something that you take away from that difference?
I honestly have no idea. I've barely ever spoken to a North American NALCS player, so it's pretty hard. But it's probably the same for most players, to be honest. I think I'm just kind of lucky because I've worked in my coaching staff for a long time, since Challenger Series. So I really can know that they're good. And it's also we don't need to discuss what champion I play so much. But when we're doing champ select, because I will just give my coach or my coaches a list of champions, and they will already have know what matchups are good and what matchups are bad, and they'll know the pros and cons from scrims. So I just give them a list of champions and then just pick one, doing champ select, something like this. And if they ask for my suggestion, then I'll, have one, or I have more options come to mind, and we just draft like that most of the time.
Alphari, you could not
trust them to do a good job. Yeah.
You could not see this because you can't see our webcam, and I tried to show it in the shot for the video on YouTube. But when you were talking about respecting your coach, Gabe was absolutely beaming. He was so happy. I haven't seen him this happy in some time.
I know a lot of stories where that isn't the case. So it's nice to see that structure is there too. And obviously that trust has taken you guys pretty far, right?
Yeah.
So
seems that way.
Hey, maybe that's a lesson for some people to learn, But in one sense, it goes both ways. Like you said, Alphari, you trust these people because you've worked with them. You understand the coaching staff, and it's different. If you look at perhaps some of the teams in the EU LCS that were relegated or nearly relegated,
there wasn't as much of a ability to trust.
You bring in a coach and you expect that those players from day one respect that person.
Yeah,
and sometimes that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
And so that's so cool though. Honestly, I'm hoping we get to a point where that is more common, when the respect for the coach is more common than the disrespect. I mean, maybe it is already. I don't know.
I can't say that for certain, but it's almost always the case in traditional sports too, right? Regardless of whether those people have used to play high-level competition in that sport in the past or not, these are people who are in these positions because they're qualified to be in these positions, and it's really up to the players at that point to be like mature and professional about it.
I think that's where the argument is.
Yes.
Right? Are they qualified to be there?
Yes.
Well, it's interesting, like, not to get off on a crazy tangent, but obviously in traditional sports, there's a huge system where from age, I don't know, 5, 6 in some cases,
You're being
brought up,
pumped in.
You're brought up in a team environment. You're told to respect the position, don't have to respect the human being because you respect the position, right? In esports, we don't necessarily have that. We
You
have
have
this thing
solo
called
queue.
solo queue where you don't respect shit. Like, so.
Speaking of, you got a lot of hype, Alphari, in Korean solo queue for, I believe, being the highest rated Western player in Korean solo queue and the first to reach Challenger. You and Pobelter were the 2 highest, but you were the first to reach Challenger. Did you find fundamental differences in the Korean solo queue ladder with, EU West or any other ladder that you've played on?
I definitely think there's pretty big differences. First of all, like, the players are a lot smarter, so they actually can kind of know what they have to do in a game. Like, their sense of macro is just stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they all know how to play lane swaps or like dancing around Baron or split push without just like getting engaged on instantly, where that you can't really say the same for EUS solo queue at all. The ping is lower. It's like 8 ping playing in Korea, which
big
is
difference.
basically the same as like playing on a tournament round for Riot.
Yeah.
So that's another big difference. And then also the players are just better, generally.
Mechanically.
A lot better. Yeah. Definitely like a lot better, I think, individually. Just at least for top lane, when I go there, I can play against players in solo queue that can even be like master tier in Korea, and they can know matchups, like certain matchups, and actually I can learn from them in solo queue. Whereas if I were to like play some matchups in EUS solo queue versus like a challenger or master top laner, it's hard to feel like it's beneficial because
it's not a
they just
learning
don't
experience.
know. They just don't know how to play the matchups themselves. Whereas in Korea, they actually kind of show that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to take it back once again to that quarterfinals. I promise this is the last time we're going to do this. Last
Colin
time
with the throwbacks.
Do you want me to make you a plaque, Colin, or what?
Okay.
Memorialize this one for you.
We got jokes, eh? We got jokes.
Yeah, we got jokes.
It's Throwback Monday, everyone.
This will be it, and then we'll move on to the future for sure. But we talked about how you were feeling before the game. We talked about how you were feeling 2-1 up. I want to know, Alphari, what the mood was, what the feeling was, what the mentality was, what the first thoughts that popped through your head were when your Nexus went down in Game 5.
Well, as soon as we lost the team fight and we knew they were going to end around Elder Dragon after we lost Smite and they like aced us basically, everyone just stopped talking because we were all too sad, I think, and it was just, there wasn't much to say. And then we shook their hands and the crowd started chanting, which was really insane actually. They started chanting MSF even after we'd lost. And I think everyone was just feeling really emotional.
How did you find the Chinese crowd? Because when I was in Wuhan for the international college tournament, it was still massive. It was like the same arena as the group stage, and it was filled to the brim. How did you find the Chinese crowd there?
I mean, I like the Chinese crowd. Like at the start, I thought it was funny how when we were like doing the like on stage introduction of all the teams, it would just be like us getting the least cheers, and then like TSM getting like really big cheers, and then World Elite getting even bigger cheers. I thought it was pretty funny at the start, and then obviously after we beat SKT and they were like cheering us, just it was really insane.
How did that make you feel to be in a different hemisphere and have all those people chanting for you?
Yeah,
it's crazy to think about.
I was just really grateful. Like we just got so close to like everyone wanted it so badly, and we failed, and we were all just feeling really sad. And then like the crowd just kind of brought us like back to reality and gave us some put it in perspective, right? And yeah, it was touching.
That's crazy, man. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Rocky 4, but that's
Oh my
totally what it reminds me
come
of.
on.
Now, I know they weren't
So
playing a
different.
Chinese team, right? But like it was still the foreign crowd starts chanting for the
Jesus.
foreign.
Wait, is that the one with the Russian? And
Yes, Ivan Drago was his
Drago.
name.
Oh, that's a. Oh,
So Misfits are Rocky. You guys get it. Okay. We can move on now.
okay, great.
Do you want to move on to the grand finals? You want to do that?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah,
we
because
have to.
I think Alphari actually almost answered this question for me a little while ago, but I do want to give him more of a chance to expand on it because we wanted to know, okay, so you've been through the ringer with SKT, right? So who better than you to give some advice to Samsung? If you had them in a room right now and they're like, oh my God, dude, we got to win this. What can we do? What would you tell them?
So honestly, Samsung have been looking like really strong lately, so I doubt they really need my advice. But
shit.
I think it's just going to come down to whoever team fights better mid game, and I think Samsung recently have been looking more consistent, but it's really like 50-50 on the day as to who will like team fight better and be more decisive. I think probably SKT have a slight edge in that regard because of like how much experience they've been, and it's not like they're going to choke anymore. So they've been in like so many best of fives. Like if they go 2-2 versus Samsung, I think it's pretty likely they're just going to like win. Because maybe Samsung will choke, like Crown might get nervous or something like this. But
go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, I think both teams have a good chance, but I think SKT will definitely close if they have like a 2-1 lead or 2-2 lead. But I think Samsung have a stronger top laner. I think Kuve's put on like a really good show. It's like probably the best top laner in the world, like he did last year at Worlds. I thought he was like the best top laner in the world then. And it's just really impressive player overall, but at the same time, Faker as well has just been performing insane as per usual.
Yeah.
And like the bot lane and jungle, I think are pretty evenly matched. So I think it's just going to come down to how Kuve can kind of balance out Faker and how Samsung can like pressure mid game versus probably like split pusher, because Huni's just going to play split push like Gnar or Jace.
I two things. One is I was talking to Colin on the commute over, and I was saying this may be the best that I've ever seen Faker perform ever, and like he really is like outstanding. Because the main difference between this year and like 2014, when he was also trying to put the team on his back, is one, he didn't carry his team to Worlds in 2014. And two is this time he's putting the team on his back and he's actually winning, right? And he's doing it in a meta where like mid lane is kind of a way to service other lanes rather than a way to win alone. So I think that's pretty interesting. Thing number two is I kind of want to push you a little bit more, Alphari, on your answer, because you did say like team fighting is 50-50 for these teams. Is there like a particular champion or a particular strategy that Samsung should go after in order to skew it a little bit in their favor instead of keeping it kind of 50-50, like hedging your bets and making sure you're not wrong in your prediction?
I would say Samsung definitely needs to be the more proactive team.
Okay.
So champions with Engage for Ambition and CoreJJ would probably be better over champions like Lulu in the bot lane. You know, I would prefer to see like a Rakan out of CoreJJ, or like a Taric and something like a Segrani or Jarvan for Ambition that are like pretty solid at all points in the game, but have this ability to start fights off in a mid game.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like if both teams would have like an Ardent Sensor support and that kind of playstyle where it's just like scaling, and whichever team runs into the other like basically wins, I feel like SKT are more comfortable with that kind of playstyle playing around Blank than Samsung is playing around Ruler. So I think it does benefit Samsung to have more Engage, also because SKT have like been playing around Huni a lot for the past few series, you know, putting him on carries like Jace and putting Faker on roaming champions that are really hard to lose early game against, like Talia, Galio.
Yeah.
And just funneling resources topside into getting the Jace in a strong enough position to split push, having the extra Engage to like force Baron or to make picks on the side lane will be really useful, I think.
Now, with Worlds, the end of Worlds on the horizon, there's something big going on in your backyard, so to speak, as well, Alphari.
Not literally. Don't worry about
well,
it.
Don't
look back.
Yeah,
don't look back.
No worries, you're good. There's no bears in your backyard or anything. What I was referring to, of course, is just today, hours ago, as we record this, there were some pretty large changes for the EU LCS announced by Riot. We knew that something was going to come for a while. There was a lot of speculation. There were some leaks about what it might become. There were some concerns from certain teams. But now we kind of have the official word. And that entails, and correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but it goes back to best of ones, or it goes to best of ones.
Double round robin, best of one.
Okay. There's going to be added stipends for the team, temporary boosted stipends.
For the year, yeah.
For the year. And there's also going to be, is it a complete reduction of mid-season relegation?
So the mid-season relegation will not happen at all. So between the spring and summer splits, the teams stay the exact same as they are.
Right. So, yeah, Alphari, I know that was kind of a shotgun question there, but it was a blast. But, yeah, what are your thoughts on these changes?
I don't really think that's like changed much, really. They just changed it back to best of one, which I don't prefer, but at the same time, I don't think it's a difference that's that big enough to care that much about. I think.
Why not?
Well, if you're going to be the better team, you're going to have to like be able to. Okay, so you can be a better team in a best of three, but at the same time, if you're not the better team in a best of one, it's hard to say if you're actually the better team. Like, personally, I think you need to be able to perform in like both scenarios. Like, if you can't win one, then maybe not deserving to win the other.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that it doesn't affect it as much as people make it out to. Whereas, like, if you play a best of one and a best of three, like, obviously I don't know for sure because I've never played many best of ones. I've only played it in group stages.
Mm-hmm.
But I think ultimately the team that's more prepared in terms of strategy and drafting is going to be kind of clear in the best of one, where people were kind of saying that strategy and planning helps more of a best of threes, which it does for sure. But I don't think it's like as big of a difference as people make it out to be.
How do you feel about the claim of teams losing stage experience and how that can be a bad thing? Is that something that you think about in the best of one versus best of three debate?
Not really. I don't think having a lot more stage experience in games and regular season games is that important, because regular season games, they all kind of feel the same, right? Like, if you have more experience playing, you're already going to be playing like 18 best of ones throughout the split, right? So if you play like another 10 on top, it's not really going to change much, because by the time you already play like 2 or 3, you're already going to be comfortable for like the entire best of ones, or at least you should be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're comfortable with best of ones, that doesn't mean that you're comfortable with best of threes or best of fives. I think that's where having more experience would actually be useful, because you go straight from best of ones to best of fives, then I can see that being more of an issue than, not having enough best of ones or best of threes to feel comfortable during the regular season. I think feeling more comfortable during playoffs is what's actually important. I don't think that having a larger sample size during the regular season is going to change that anyway.
Alphari, as I alluded to before, right before we got this official proclamation from Riot, there was a lot of speculation. There were, as I said, a couple teams, specifically I'm talking about H2K and UOL, who came out with public statements that were, how should I say, they had a worried tone. They were critical of some assumed coming changes. I want to know, like, from a personal level, as you as a player in the EU LCS, were you ever concerned? Were you ever worried for the future of the league, perhaps even your job?
I've never been really worried about my job, because I just know that it's my job to be a good player, and if I'm a good player, then I'm always going to have a job, because I just go to America in that case, or any other region if I'm like good enough, and EU West or the EU LCS like no longer exists in a theoretical scenario. So I don't think it matters so much if there's like more jobs being lost, because you still just need to be the best anyway. You can't just be complacent being like 10th and then saying, oh, well, I'm not 10th anymore, I guess I don't have a job, because you always need to be striving to be first and like keep your job that way, I think. So I don't really mind about that.
Well, speaking of being the best and not settling for 10th, would you ever consider a jump to NA?
That has nothing to do with being the best.
Whoa.
It
Look at how far those two regions went in the tournament,
Yeah.
Colin.
Well, that's not what I meant to imply at all. But the fact of the
The
matter,
land of 0 and 10.
the fact of the matter is that the business landscape in the two leagues is going to be incredibly different next year.
Especially for 2018. Yeah.
One of them, I'm talking about 2018. One of them is going to have a shitload of money. Frankly, that's the technical term. It's actually a metric shitload. So, I just want to know from Alphari's position as a player, like, are you looking at that going, I would like some craft group money, or not craft group.
Those euros I'm getting, I would like that to be US dollars now.
Yeah, has that a thought ever crossed your mind?
I think it's crossed the mind for like most players, if not all, in Europe, who are good enough to like get imported, even though there's not many import slots anymore, I feel. Everyone's obviously considered it, but at the end of the day, like, Europe is still going to be a good league, and there's still good organizations and good teams, and it is shown like pretty repetitively that it's a better region, I think. This year it did again, I feel like, and it's been kind of the way for a while now. Like, I can look to America, and the best team is probably TSM, although Cloud9 I also think actually kind of stepped up this tournament. I think Contracts is like pretty good for an NA player. And,
Nice.
yeah, but if you like compare the teams like TSM to say G2, who have also like been this powerhouse in Europe for so long now, for like 2 years.
It's a long time in esports.
Yeah, I really don't think that you can like fairly compare them just with how much better I think G2 are. So I've definitely considered it. Like, every player has, when we're hearing these like crazy new changes. I was hearing like a lot of rumors, and hearing stuff like I'm going to go back to the UK scene or something like this. But yeah, I'm happy that Riot didn't take too much of a drastic approach to splitting all these regions up, like was one of the rumors. But yeah, I've definitely heard about some NA incentives, but for now I'm happy to stay in Europe.
Speaking of UK region, this is something that we kind of want to mention, but this is, as far as we could tell,
most UK players
on a team at Worlds.
On a team at Worlds, yeah, absolutely.
Ever.
UK squad.
And you guys just teamed up on this roster. So this is
you guys did play in the past together.
Yeah.
I remember Maxlor talking about that.
Yeah. But I mean like they come into this situation, it's a new team.
Right.
And it's like, you guys made it all the way to Worlds. Like, it must feel unreal almost, Like, it must feel sort of unreal to be like,
you guys are playing online together like a couple of years ago, and now you're in China playing together. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Like, when we were in China, we will sometimes joke about, like 1.5 years ago, we were like playing in the UK scene, and now we're like playing for SKT or, playing at Worlds and all this. But it's definitely been, a fast progression up the league, but I kind of knew that me and Maxlor could like make it to Worlds. Like, even when in 2015 we were like playing together for the first time, I had confidence that we were like both good players, and we only improved since then. We both had good attitudes, and they both like obviously being worked on as well. So yeah, I definitely had confidence.
Did you think you would make it together? Was it this like kind of duo situation, like we're gonna make it as a UK team, or was it just like, oh, I'll see you in the LCS if you're on like Fnatic or whatever?
Well, I actually thought basically for a long time that he's like one of the best junglers in Europe, even when he was on like Giants and Roccat, when his team's really underperforming, and it would be like pretty hard to justify saying he's like one of the better junglers. But I kind of thought that because I've had experience playing with him, so even though he's losing a lot, I still can kind of value what he brings to the team. And we were definitely like, actually even before we brought Kakao in, we were like debating between, I think that like the two main candidates would like bring in like a jungler from Europe, and if we would get a jungler from Europe, it would like definitely be Maxwell, because we just thought that he was a strong player. We like had confidence in him, but then we ended up going for Kakao because he's Korean and he has really good mechanics. But yeah, like it wasn't something that happened intentionally, of course, because we ended up going for Kakao, and fate just kind of aligned with Kakao not working out for us and Maxtor not working out with Rocket at the same time, that we just reunited, and it's been pretty good.
Yeah, pardon me for getting Canadian here. That is like some crazy shit that you would do, like playing street hockey with your friends in Canada. You'd be like, one day we're going to be in the NHL together, and I'm going to be center, and you're going to be right wing, and it's going to be awesome. We're going to play for the Montreal Canadiens. I said Montreal Canadiens, not Toronto Maple
Or the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Or the Toronto, sure, okay. But yeah, no, like that's so cool. That is so cool to be able to be like, yeah, you remember that when we were back doing that? Now we're playing against SKT. It's game 5,
Yeah,
baby. What's
let's
up?
go.
That's so cool. That's like some Mighty Ducks shit.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It's like now we're gonna play a tiebreaker against TSM, and you're gonna take a cool path and pop the fuck off and help
Yeah,
me
that's
out.
so cool. That's so cool.
So confirmed, Alphari is living simultaneously Rocky 4 and Mighty Ducks.
I realized that we skipped over actually a couple things that I want to ask about the matchup, the SKT matchup.
Oh,
my
my
goodness.
bad. That was
Yeah.
my fault.
Yeah,
Is it your turn to flashback now?
No.
No. Okay.
No. I'm not actually flashing back. This was just preempted by Colin. So, I mean, I'm going to be watching. I think I'll be awake. I'll definitely be awake.
I'll be awake.
I know Gabe's going to be awake, so he'll be watching it live. And I guess what I wanted to ask is, there was a little bit of drama on Twitter, on the league Twitter, about people who were complaining, all Korea final. Oh, it's the same final as last year. Like, I personally don't really care that they are Korean. They just happen to be the best teams at this tournament.
Yeah. Or
But-
have shown themselves to be the best teams
Right.
at this
At
tournament.
this specific tournament,
Yeah,
of course, yes. So, like, do you feel there's any merit to the idea that this is like a stale storyline, or are you just as amped as last year to see these two teams face off, Alphari?
I'm definitely not like bored of having like a 2 Korean finals. I'm really excited to watch Kuve play. Like, as always, I'm just a fan of his. I think he's a really good top laner, so whatever game he's playing, I'm going to be excited, kind of. And SKT, they've like shown that a lot of weaknesses. I think this Worlds more than ever.
Yeah.
So I also feel that, if there's going to be a Worlds that they're going to lose, it's probably going to be this one. But at the same time, they're just such a good team that even then they're still probably the favorites going into Samsung.
That's what Josh was saying earlier, because he was like, no, sorry, Sean said this. He was like, as soon as you think they're gonna lose, that's when they pull it out.
You're talking about SKT?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you remember the game in the group stage against EDG?
Yeah.
Where they were down 10K gold, and the
Yeah,
commentators
that
were
was like both the games.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and the commentators were talking about how, like, oh, yeah, they're down 10K gold. This is the kind of deficit that even if you won a team fight, it wouldn't matter, or you can't even win a team fight in the first place. And then they're just like, guess what? Orianna combo. Let's go. Bam. And it's just over. And it's just over. And it's just instantly, I was like, I remember my boss got up from his desk. He's like, oh, like, EDG have this in the bag. I'm going to go to the washroom or something. He comes back. I'm like, guess what? you bet against SKT, and look what has happened.
Yeah.
They are now in the driver's seat. So, yeah.
I think it's going to be a fun finals. I totally agree with you. There's literally no merit to the argument that just because they're Korean teams that you can't enjoy watching the game, because once you get in game, those nationalities don't matter, right? You're watching.
Well,
I don't
it's
think
not about
so.
nationalities, but I could see an argument where you're like, yo, I'm an NA fan, I'm an EU fan, shit. It's Korean teams. Yeah, it's the best League of Legends in the world, but I'm not invested in the teams. I'm not emotionally connected to them.
But it's hard for you to watch that in the first place because it's at 4 a.m. So
well, that's sort of peripheral. But to bring it Canadian again, there's great Stanley Cup series that I haven't watched because I don't give a shit about the teams.
True.
It's the
Sure.
best hockey. But,
True.
Yeah,
no, I don't know. Like, obviously, I've been hard carrying the EU favoritism in this office the whole year.
Absolutely.
I am the number one EU supporter in this office, bar none. And so, no, like actually,
I'm not disagreeing.
and so I would have preferred to see an EU team in the final, especially because, man, would that make NA fans angry. That would be so great. But it's not, and I still will watch the series. I don't know if I'm going to watch it live. No promises.
I mean, everyone has their personal takes on what kind of finals they wanted to see. Weldon, when we interviewed Weldon, he was like TSM G2. I wanted TSM G2 finals.
I wonder why he said that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like for me, it was I just want a Chinese team in the finals.
Which you didn't even get that.
I didn't even get that, and I wanted Samsung. I wanted a Chinese team versus Samsung. And yeah,
so it could have been.
I got half of that.
Yeah, you got half.
But just for the purpose of making it a really big deal in China, it would have been really awesome to see that. But yeah, everyone will have their own personal views of the kind of final they want, but these tournaments never shake out that way, right?
Yeah.
Like no one.
They always shake out with SKT in the final.
You almost never get that unless you're a Golden State Warriors fan, right? Like it's not going to happen.
That's fair.
I kind of want to throw this. I want to create this. Throw this discussion in the form of a question to Alphari.
Okay.
So again, as someone who is not as much of a League of Legends fan as you two guys are, everyone knows SKT is that shit, right? They're the best. They always in the worlds. Blah blah blah. They're the Yankees of League of Legends.
That's an okay comparison.
Yeah. I would like to know what, and I don't mean any negative connotations by that, by the way. I want to know what the it factor is for SKT. Yeah, I know Faker's on their team. Yeah, I get it. But like, I want to know from Alphari's perspective. How do they come back from all these deficits you guys are talking about? How do they get into Worlds, all these consecutive years? Like, what is this?
I think it's really hard to say, actually, since the only consistency has really been Coma and Faker, right? And sure, Coma and Faker have made really good profiles from themselves, being world champions over and over, and having really good histories. Like, you can't say that they are the best coaches, or the best coach and the best mid laner ever, but at the same time, everything else has changed so often that it's really hard to say that there's one thing or multiple things that SKT have been doing consistently throughout the years that I think is just difficult. I think they've just always had top tier players, and they've always had a strong late game. I think that's probably the most consistent thing they've had. I don't I remember, seeing an SKT game go late and thinking to myself, ooh, this might be bad for them going late game. I've always feel that SKT will always have the edge in the late game because they just have so much experience and just know how to play late game better than most teams ever.
Huh. I think that's a really interesting.
It's a pretty fair answer, actually.
Yeah. For when I spoke to Huni last, he actually compared Coma to an artist who was painting with each of the players.
They were all different.
Yeah, they were
color,
all he had a
brush,
palette, and he was using each player to paint a picture. And to me, I almost wonder if that dedication to finding the right niche for each player is not a part of their success as well. Because while the roster has changed, and obviously Faker is this titan, it feels like the decision to take Huni over Antara, and then to have a backup for Peanut and Blake, or maybe the other way. At the beginning, I thought maybe Peanut would be playing fewer games than we've seen. Yeah, honestly. I almost wonder if that is maybe Coma is a big part of that, honestly.
Trust your coaches.
Yeah, it feels like Coma is probably a big part of that. I don't know that for sure. But.
I do want to stress also, I do think Alphari's right. The only consistent point is Faker and Coma, right? And I think there's something to be said about Faker's flexibility.
Yeah.
Where no matter what the meta is, no matter what the stage is, he'll be able to pull out a Galio mid. He'll be able to pull out an Aurelia mid. Maybe he can't do Xerath, but he can play Azir, right? There are all these options for Faker in the mid lane, and the mid lane is this focal point of the map that keeps it consistent, I think has a lot to do with SKT's success. Even though, it's a really easy answer to say, oh, they have the best player in the world, they're going to lean on that. I think it's a lot more than they have the best player in the world, that he's also able to be so flexible in so many different environments. I mean, Faker he was known for his Zed because it was flashy, but his most successful champions used to be like LeBlanc and Lulu, right? And there's such a stark difference in play style between those two.
Yeah. I feel like that's a good point overall. Like, we've seen him adapt, and we've seen even years where his team was not great, but he did his damnedest to carry them. Mm-hmm. And that sort of flexibility, I think, is a big part of it too. I think you nailed it, Gabe. I don't know.
Well, I always like to end on a reflective note. I think that kind of about does it for our questions. And this is sort of the part of the show, Alphari, where we want to know, if there's anything that you wanted to mention, you wanted to talk about that maybe you didn't get a chance to, or even, a message, something you wanted to say to fans, to Misfits fans, maybe to the fans in China, now would be the time.
No, there wasn't really anything that I wanted to bring up. I just wanted to talk about Worlds, and I think we've done that. So I guess to all my fans, I'll just say thank you for supporting me, and I'll try to be the best player possible, like next season and seasons after.
Awesome.
Well, Barney, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for making time for the Score Esports podcast.
Have a great time at home. Rest up.
Yeah, definitely get some rest.
Buy some Yu-Gi-Oh cards and
What
meet
the hell?
Maxlore at the park, dude.
Get back in the game. The duel.
It's time to stop this podcast.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. Thanks a lot, Barney. We really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks.
See ya.
Cheers.
See ya.
Wow.
So
I had to throw that in there. I'm sorry.
That was fine. Totally called for. Alphari Kaiba.
Alpha. No, I don't know. I don't think that works.
That doesn't really work.
I
at
really
all.
do think it's funny though. I keep saying this in the office, but MLXG looks like Weevil Underwood.
Yeah.
I've just drawn that connection inherently.
You can tell that we've had too much Yu-Gi-Oh on in the background at the office. It's all in our brain.
Yeah, no, I'm not happy with the Yu-Gi-Oh. I've been informed apparently it's not anime, Gabe. It looks like anime to me.
Sure does.
It's for kids. I don't know if you can call for kids shows.
Yeah, like most anime, it's for kids.
Cool.
That's
You just activated my
amazing.
trap card, man. It's called
Yeah, so-
End of Podcast.
I think.
what does it do?
Basically, it is like Time Wizard in that it speeds up time to when we've already ended the podcast.
But there's no spinny thing though.
there's no RNG involved.
Yeah,
It just does it. It just does it. No fucking bullshit. Flip a coin, roll a die. None of that stuff.
Well, you don't like RNG? Some of the greatest card games in the world are based on RNG.
Nah, shoutouts to Magic.
Shoutouts to RNG. You tried, but you
True.
failed.
You failed.
It's okay.
Anyways, guys, that about does it for us here at the Score Esports Podcast. My name is Colin McNeil. For Josh Burry, Gabriel Zoltan Johan, I'm going to say GG.
Have a good day, everyone.
See ya.